The stars were burning. Across 1,000 worlds, the dread swarm consumed everything in its path. Entire civilizations vanished in weeks. The great empires of the galaxy, ancient and proud, trembled before an enemy that knew no mercy, no negotiation, no fear. Earth was young. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 40 years ago. They were small, weak, and desperate. Their fleet was nothing compared to the great powers. Their technology was centuries behind, but they needed allies or they would die alone. The Empire was the oldest civilization in known space. Their ships were beautiful and deadly. Their soldiers were tall, graceful, and impossibly fast. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they looked at humans the way a king might look at insects. But war makes strange allies. The Emperor agreed to protect Earth's colonies. In exchange, he demanded a symbol of unity, a marriage between a human and nobility, a political bond sealed in flesh and ceremony. Earth's leaders needed a sacrifice, someone expendable, someone with no family to mourn them, no connections to complicate matters, someone who would accept their fate without complaint. They found was 32 years old. He had been a soldier since he was 18. He had fought in the border conflicts, the colony rebellions, and 3 engagements against swarm raiding parties. He had medals he never wore and scars he never showed. His parents were dead. He had no siblings, no wife, no children. He was perfect. Admiral called him into his office on a Tuesday morning. The old man looked tired. He had been his mentor for 15 years. "I need you to do something," said, "something difficult." Stood at attention, "Yes, sir." "The want a marriage alliance. High Command has selected you as the candidate." There was a long silence. His face did not change. "You will travel to there," continued. "You will marry a noblewoman named Lady of House Kirin. You will live among them as her consort. You will represent humanity in their court." "For how long, sir?" Looked away. "Forever. This is permanent." Understood. He was being sold, traded like cargo for the protection of billions. He thought about refusing. He thought about walking away. But he remembered the burning colonies, the screaming civilians, the children he could not save. "I accept," he said quietly. His eyes filled with something that might have been grief. "I'm sorry, son. I wish there was another way." "There isn't," said. "This is my duty. I will fulfill it." 3 weeks later, he boarded a transport ship. He owned nothing but a small bag of clothes and a photograph of his parents. He did not look back at Earth as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. It was beautiful beyond words. Crystal towers rose into purple skis. Gardens floated on anti-gravity platforms. Everything was elegant, refined, and ancient. Felt like a peasant walking into a palace. Lady met him at the landing platform. She was tall like all. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes were deep violet, and her hair fell like black silk to her waist. She wore robes of white and gold that probably cost more than his entire life savings. She was beautiful in the way a statue is beautiful. Cold, perfect, untouchable. She looked at him the way someone might look at a stain on their furniture. "You are the human," she said. Her voice was musical but empty. "Yes, my lady. I am of House Kirin. We will be married tomorrow. The ceremony will last 4 hours. You will speak only when instructed. You will bow when instructed. Do you understand?" "Yes, my lady." She studied him for a long moment. "You are shorter than I expected, and plainer." Said nothing. "Follow me," she said, turning away. "Your quarters have been prepared." The wedding was grand and hollow. Thousands of nobles attended, dressed in silks and jewels. They whispered behind their hands as walked down the aisle. He heard fragments of their gossip: primitive, barbarian, pet, animal. He kept his eyes forward and his back straight. The vows were spoken in the language, had memorized his lines phonetically. He did not understand most of what he said, but he said it perfectly, without error, because that was his mission. When it was done's hand touched his briefly. Her skin was cool, almost cold. She did not look at him. That night they entered their shared chambers, began to move toward the bed, uncertain of what was expected. "Stop," said. She pointed to a smaller room adjoining the main chamber. "You will sleep there. This marriage is political. It is duty, nothing more." Nodded. "I understand, my lady. Do not expect affection. Do not expect kindness. I will fulfill my obligations as your wife in public. In private, we are strangers." "Yes, my lady." She paused, seeming almost surprised by his calm acceptance. "You do not argue. You do not protest." Met her eyes for the first time. "I am a soldier, my lady. I follow orders. I complete missions. I do not complain about circumstances I cannot change." Something flickered in her violet eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or confusion. "You are strange," she said finally, "even for a human." "Perhaps," he agreed. She turned away and closed the door between them. Sat on his small bed in his small room. He was alone on an alien world, married to a woman who despised him, surrounded by people who saw him as less than an animal. He took out the photograph of his parents. They smiled up at him from 30 years ago, young and hopeful. "I'm doing my best," he whispered to them. "I hope it's enough." Then he lay down, closed his eyes, and slept. Tomorrow would be another day of duty. He would face it the same way he faced everything. One step at a time. Months passed like slow water, learned to live as a ghost in the palace. He woke early before anyone else. He dressed in simple clothes. He ate alone in the servants' kitchen because the nobles did not want to see him in the dining hall. No one spoke to him, except to give orders or insults. The servants called him the pet. The nobles called him the animal. Some did not even use words. They simply looked through him as if he did not exist. Accepted it all without complaint. He had learned long ago that anger was a luxury soldiers could not afford. Emotions clouded judgment. Pride got people killed. So he swallowed his feelings and focused on what he could control. He trained. The palace had a training hall for the royal guards. It was filled with beautiful weapons and advanced combat simulators. No one used it in the early mornings, so claimed that time as his own. Every day, 3 hours before dawn, he ran. He lifted weights. He practiced combat forms with his hands, with blades, with any weapon he could find. His body was the only thing he truly owned, and he refused to let it grow weak. The guards sometimes watched him from the doorway. They laughed at his techniques, calling them primitive. They mocked his speed, which was slower than theirs. They pointed at his muscles, which were different from their lean, graceful builds. Ignored them and kept training. Lady noticed. She did not speak to him often. When they appeared together in public, she performed the role of wife perfectly. She held his arm. She smiled politely. She answered questions about their marriage with diplomatic grace. But in private, she barely acknowledged his existence. Until one evening. Was finishing his training routine, covered in sweat, breathing hard. He did not hear her enter. When he turned, she was standing in the doorway, watching him with those strange violet eyes. "You train every day," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, my lady." "Why, there is no war for you here. You are a consort, not a soldier. Your fighting days are over." Wiped his face with a cloth. He considered her question carefully before answering. "War always comes," he said. "The only question is whether you are ready when it arrives." Frowned. "They have protected this world for 10,000 years. The swarm has never touched our. There is a first time for everything, my lady." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned and left without another word. But after that night, sometimes caught her watching him from windows and balconies. She never approached him again. She never spoke to him about training, but she watched. He wondered what she was thinking. 3 months later, Prince came to the palace. Was cousin. He was handsome, charming, and popular among the nobility. He was also the leader of a political faction that opposed the alliance with Earth. He believed humans were inferior creatures who would contaminate culture. He hated on sight. "So this is the animal they married to my cousin," said at a formal dinner. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Tell me, human, can you even understand what I am saying? Or do you need someone to translate?" Looked at him calmly. "I understand you perfectly, Your Highness." "Remarkable, it speaks," laughed, and the nobles around him laughed too. "Tell me, do you also do tricks? Can you fetch, roll over, play dead?" Said nothing. His jaw tightened, but she did not speak. To defend him publicly would be political suicide. Leaned closer, his smile sharp as a knife. "You do not belong here, human. You are a temporary embarrassment. When the war ends, you will be discarded like the garbage you are." Still remained silent. His face showed nothing. Seemed disappointed by the lack of reaction. He wanted anger. He wanted tears. He wanted to break this human in front of everyone. So he arranged something worse. 1 week later, a ceremonial combat exhibition was announced. It was an old tradition. Noble warriors would duel for honor and glory, and somehow his name appeared on the list. His opponent was Commander, the finest warrior in the royal guard. He was 2 meters tall, impossibly fast, and had never lost a duel in 20 years. "You do not have to do this," told the night before. They were in their chambers, and for once she actually looked at him. "Refuse, claim illness. No one expects you to fight." "If I refuse, I shame you," said. "I shame Earth. I prove everything they believe about humans." "You will be killed." "Perhaps," he shrugged, "perhaps not." Stared at him in disbelief. "You cannot possibly believe you can win." Smiled. It was a small, tired smile. "My lady, I have been underestimated my entire life. I have fought enemies bigger than me, faster than me, better equipped than me. I am still here." He bowed to her and retired to his small room. The next day, the entire court gathered in the grand arena. Thousands of nobles filled the seats. They wore their finest clothes. They drank expensive wine. They whispered and laughed about the slaughter they were about to witness. Walked into the arena wearing simple training clothes. He carried no weapon. By tradition, weapons would be provided. Commander stood across from him like a silver god. He was perfect in every way. His armor gleamed. His blade hummed with energy. His face showed complete confidence. "Little human," said quietly so only could hear. "I will try to make this quick. I take no pleasure in killing the helpless." Picked up the blade provided for him. It was a standard sword, curved and beautiful. He tested its weight and balance. "Thank you for your kindness," he said, "but I am not helpless." The signal sounded. The duel began. Attacked with blinding speed. His blade was a silver blur. The crowd gasped at his beauty and power. Did not try to match his speed. He could not. Instead, he moved differently. He watched patterns. He noticed habits. He saw the tiny tells before each strike. And he exploited them. 3 minutes later, Commander lay unconscious on the ground. His sword arm was twisted at an unnatural angle. His perfect face was pressed into the dirt. Stood over him, breathing steadily. Not a single mark on his body. The arena was silent. 10,000 stared in shock. Then slowly bowed to the crowd, to his fallen opponent, and to the noble box where sat frozen. He walked out of the arena without looking back. That night came to his small room for the first time. She stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. "How," she whispered, "how did you do that?" Looked up from his book. "He was predictable, my lady. Talent made him lazy. He never learned to adapt because he never had to." "And you?" "I had to adapt every single day of my life, or die," he shrugged. "Humans are not strong or fast, but we learn, we endure, we survive." Was quiet for a long time. "I think," she said slowly, "I have misjudged you." He smiled gently. "Most people do, my lady. I am used to it." She nodded once and left. But the next morning, for the first time, she joined him for breakfast. Things changed after the duel. Slowly, quietly, but they changed. Began eating meals with. At first they sat in silence. Then she started asking questions. Small things. What was Earth like? What did humans eat? What music did they enjoy? Answered honestly without trying to impress her. He described the blue oceans and green forests. He talked about his mother's cooking. He hummed old songs from his childhood. She listened with genuine curiosity. He was not what she expected. He was not loud or aggressive or primitive. He was quiet and thoughtful and surprisingly gentle. The servants noticed the change. The nobles noticed too. Whispers spread through the palace. Perhaps the human was not so terrible. Perhaps Lady was softening toward him. Prince noticed as well, and he was not pleased. 6 months after the duel was assigned a diplomatic mission. She would visit a border colony world called to meet with local leaders. It was routine work, nothing dangerous. The swarm was still far away, fighting on distant fronts. "I will accompany you," said when she told him. "There is no need. I will have guards." "I am your husband, my lady. My place is at your side." She looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not love exactly, but perhaps the beginning of respect, perhaps even trust. "Very well," she said, "you may come." Was a beautiful world. It had vast forests and crystal-clear lakes. The local were warm and welcoming. They hosted feasts and ceremonies in his honor, stayed in the background, watching quietly, always alert. On the third day, the sky turned black. Was the first to see them. Hundreds of dark shapes dropping through the atmosphere, swarm landing pods, each carrying dozens of soldiers. They fell like rain, like a plague, like death itself. "Get to the shelter," he shouted, grabbing his arm. "Now." Chaos erupted. The guards tried to form defensive lines, but the swarm was already among them. These were not the weak raiding parties had fought before. These were elite soldiers, bred for planetary assault. They were twice the size of humans, covered in black armor like shells, with blades growing from their arms. They killed without hesitation. Guards fell one by one. The local militia was slaughtered in minutes. Communications were jammed. The orbital defense fleet was overwhelmed. There would be no rescue, no escape. Pulled through burning streets. Her face was pale with shock. She had never seen war, not like this, not up close. "Keep moving," he told her. "Stay behind me." They reached a collapsed building, a dead end, and behind them footsteps, heavy, clicking, inhuman footsteps. 5 swarm soldiers emerged from the smoke. They saw, and their mandibles clicked in what might have been anticipation. A noble would make a valuable prisoner, or a satisfying meal. Stepped between them and his wife. He had no weapon except a blade he had taken from a fallen guard. It was broken, only half its original length. His clothes were torn. His left arm was bleeding from a cut he did not remember receiving. Whispered, "There are too many." "Stay behind me," he said again. His voice was calm, completely calm. The first swarm soldier lunged. What happened next would be told as legend for 1,000 years. Did not fight he did not fight with grace or beauty. He fought like a human. He fought like an animal. He fought like something that refused to die. He dodged the first strike and drove his broken blade into the joint between the creature's head and body. It screamed and fell. Before it hit the ground, had already moved to the second. He took wounds. A claw ripped across his back. A blade cut deep into his thigh. Blood poured from his body, but he did not stop. He could not stop. If he stopped, would die. The second swarm soldier fell with its own blade buried in its chest. The third lost its head. The fourth tried to run, caught it in 3 steps and broke its neck with his bare hands. The fifth managed to knock him down. It stood over him, raising its bladed arm for the killing blow. Looked up at it, blood filled his eyes, his body was broken, he could feel his life draining away. But was still behind him, still alive. He caught the descending blade between his hands, the edges cut deep into his palms, blood poured through his fingers. The pain was unimaginable. But he held. He held until he could twist his body, kick the creature's leg out from under it, and drive his elbow through its skull. Then there was silence. Stood alone in a circle of dead monsters. 5 swarm elite soldiers, each one capable of killing a squad of normal fighters. 5 bodies, 5 kills. His body was more wound than flesh. He should have been dead. He should have fallen after the first injury, but he was still standing. Stared at him in horror and awe. She breathed, "Your injuries." He turned to her. His face was covered in blood, but his eyes were clear. "Are you safe?" he asked. "Yes, because of you." He smiled, a peaceful, exhausted smile. "Good," he said. Then he collapsed. Caught him before he hit the ground. His blood soaked her beautiful robes. His body was limp and broken in her arms. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, stay with me, stay with me." His eyes fluttered. "My lady," I kept, "my duty." "Forget duty, just live, please." She held him close, pressing her hand against the worst of his wounds, screaming for help that might never come. Hours later, a rescue team finally arrived. They found sitting in the ruins, covered in blood, holding her unconscious husband against her chest. Around them lay 5 dead swarm soldiers. The rescue commander, a veteran of 30 years, looked at the scene and could not believe his eyes. "One human did this?" he asked. "Yes," said, her voice was hollow, broken. "He did this for me." They took to the medical ship. His heart stopped twice during transport. Twice the doctors brought him back. His injuries were catastrophic. No could have survived them. But was not. He was human. And humans, the doctors would later write in their reports, do not die easily. They cling to life with a stubbornness that defies medical science. They refuse to surrender, even when surrender is the only logical choice. For 3 days, hung between life and death. And for 3 days never left his side. She held his hand. She whispered to him. She prayed to God she had not believed in since childhood. "Come back to me," she begged. "Please come back to me." On the 4th day, his eyes opened. The first thing he saw was her face. She was crying. He had never seen her cry before. "My lady," he whispered, "you are crying." "Of course I am crying, you fool," she sobbed. "I thought you were dead." He reached up with a bandaged hand and gently touched her cheek. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not mean to worry you." She laughed through her tears. It was the first time he had ever heard her laugh. "You are the strangest man I have ever known," she said. "Perhaps," he agreed, "but I am still here." She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. "Yes," she whispered, "you are still here, and I am never letting you go." Outside the medical bay, the galaxy was learning a new truth about humans. They were not weak. They were not primitive. They were terrifying. Healed slowly. His body was strong, but even human endurance had limits. The doctors said he would need months of recovery. They said he should rest, should be patient, should let his wounds close properly. He was back on his feet in 6 weeks. Stayed with him through every moment. She read to him when he was too weak to hold books. She helped him walk when his legs trembled. She held his hand during the painful therapy sessions when they taught his muscles to work again. The cold noblewoman who had dismissed him on their wedding night was gone. In her place was someone barely recognized. Someone warm. Someone worried. Someone who looked at him with eyes full of something he was afraid to name. "You do not have to stay," he told her one evening. "I know you have duties, responsibilities." "You are my responsibility," she said firmly. You are my husband. A political arrangement, my lady. You said so yourself. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she took his bandaged hand in hers. I was wrong, she said, about many things, about you most of all. He stared at her. My lady. She corrected, when we are alone, call me. He smiled. It hurt his face, which was still healing from a deep cut across his cheek, but he smiled anyway. He said softly, that is a beautiful name. She blushed. He had not known could blush. While recovered, the galaxy burned. The swarm was advancing on every front. Colony after colony fell. The great fleets of the allied species fought desperately, but they were losing. The enemy was endless, relentless, patient as death itself. And then the footage spread. Someone had found security recordings from. They showed a single human fighting 5 swarm elite soldiers. They showed him taking impossible wounds and refusing to fall. They showed him protecting his wife with nothing but a broken blade and raw determination. The video spread across every world, every station, every ship in the Alliance. Billions watched, billions wondered. How could one human do what entire squads of could not? Scientists studied the footage. They analyzed his movements, his tactics, his physiology. They wrote papers with titles like Human Combat Adaptation and The Persistence Factor. Their conclusion was simple: humans were different. Were born with perfect bodies. They were fast and graceful from childhood. They trained to refine what nature gave them. But they had never needed to struggle. They had never needed to fight against their own limitations. Humans were weak from birth. They grew slowly. They aged quickly. They broke easily. But because of this, they learned to adapt. They learned to endure. They learned to push past pain, past exhaustion, past the limits of what should be possible. A warrior fought until he was hurt too badly to continue. A human warrior fought until he was dead, and sometimes not even then. The Galactic Council took notice. They were desperate. The war was going badly. They needed something new, something unexpected, something that could inspire their demoralized troops. They needed a symbol. 3 months after, a delegation arrived at the palace. They came with an offer that shocked everyone. They wanted to lead a joint strike force against the swarm. Absolutely not, said immediately. He nearly died. He is still recovering. I will not allow it. My lady, the lead diplomat said carefully, with respect, this is not your decision. This is a matter of galactic survival. I am his wife. His welfare is my concern. And the welfare of trillions is ours. The argument continued for hours. Sat quietly listening. When everyone had finished shouting, he finally spoke. I will do it. Spun toward him, no. He stood slowly, still favoring his left leg. I am a soldier. This is what I was born to do, what I was trained to do. If I can help end this war, I must try. You will die. Perhaps, perhaps not. He walked to her and took her hands in his. But if I hide here, safe and comfortable, while others fight and die in my place, I could not live with myself, and I think deep down you know that. Her eyes filled with tears. I do not want to lose you. You will not, he promised. I will come back to you, I swear it. She pulled him close and held him tightly. He held her back. Foolish human, she whispered into his shoulder. Stubborn, reckless, wonderful fool. Your fool, he said gently, always yours. The emperor himself attended the ceremony, was given the title of War Marshal, the highest military rank in the empire. He was the first not to hold it in 10,000 years. The nobles whispered, some were outraged, some were skeptical, but after no one dared to openly mock him anymore. Prince watched from the shadows, his face twisted with hatred. That night after the ceremony, met with his agents in a secret location. This cannot stand, he said, a human commanding our fleets, leading our soldiers, it is an abomination. What would you have us do, my prince? Smiled coldly. The swarm has spies among us. They pay well for information. Perhaps we can arrange for our new war marshal to walk into a trap. You would betray the alliance. I would save our species from contamination. His eyes were hard. The human will die a hero's death in battle. The alliance will continue without him, and purity will be preserved. The agents nodded. In the darkness, treason took root. Knew nothing of plots. He was too busy preparing for war. He studied maps, analyzed enemy movements, and met with commanders from a dozen species. He trained mixed units in tactics that combined human adaptability with precision. At first, the other officers resisted. They did not want to take orders from a human, but did not demand respect. He earned it. He worked harder than anyone. He knew every detail of every operation. He remembered every name, every face, every sacrifice. And slowly, grudgingly, they began to follow him. "You are changing things," told him one evening. They sat together on their balcony, watching the stars. It was the first quiet moment they had shared in weeks. "I am just doing my job," said. "No, you are doing more than that." She leaned against his shoulder. "You are giving them hope." He put his arm around her. It still amazed him that she allowed this, that she wanted this. "I used to wonder why I was chosen for this mission," he said quietly. "A nobody from nowhere, married to an alien princess. It seemed like a cruel joke. And now—" He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there the swarm was waiting. Millions of soldiers, billions of drones, all hungry for destruction. "Now I think maybe it was fate," he said. "Maybe I was always meant to be here, not as a sacrifice but as something else." "As what?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice soft but steady. "As a weapon." Took his hand. "Then strike true, my love," she said, "and come home to me." He kissed her forehead gently. "Always," he promised, "always." Far across the galaxy, the swarm fleet was massing. The final battle was coming. And the expendable human, the political sacrifice, the quiet soldier from a small blue world would meet it head-on. The god of war was rising. The Allied fleet gathered at the edge of swarm space. 2,000 warships from 12 species, the largest military force in galactic history, stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the endless stars. Somewhere beyond those stars was the swarm's central hive, the heart of their empire, the brain that controlled their endless armies. Kill the hive, kill the swarm. Simple in theory, almost impossible in practice. His hologram flickered beside him. She was back on the coordinating logistics and support. She wanted to come with him, but he had refused. "If I fall," he told her before leaving, "someone must continue the fight. Someone must protect our people." "I do not want to be protected," she said. "I want to be with you." "You are with me." He touched his chest over his heart. "Always." Now her hologram watched him with worried eyes. "The fleet is ready," she reported. "All units confirm battle readiness." "Thank you." Her voice softened. "Come back to me." "I will," he promised. "I swore it, remember." She smiled, but her eyes were wet. "I remember. I am holding you to it." The hologram faded, turned to his crew. "Begin the operation." The Allied fleet jumped into swarm space. What followed was chaos. The swarm was waiting for them, not with their usual scattered defenses, but with a concentrated force nearly twice the size of the Allied fleet. They swarmed out of hiding places in asteroids and dead moons, surrounding the Allied ships in a sphere of death. It was a trap. Blood ran cold. Someone had betrayed them. Someone had told the swarm exactly where and when to attack. "All ships, evasive formation," he ordered. "Group leaders, protect your flanks. Do not let them isolate you." The battle erupted in light and fire. Ships died by the dozens, torn apart by swarm weapons. Communications were chaos. Commanders screamed for support that could not reach them in time. On the bridge, an officer approached with a grim face. "Sir, we intercepted a transmission before the attack. It came from within our fleet." He handed over a data pad. It was directed to the Swarm Command. Looked at the source of the transmission. His face hardened. "Prince." There was no time for anger, no time for justice, only time for war. "Forward that evidence to the Emperor," said coldly. "Let handle, we have a battle to win." "Sir, we are outnumbered. Our losses are already severe. Perhaps we should retreat and—" "No," his voice cut like steel. "We came here to end this war. We will end it or die trying." He opened a fleet-wide channel. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot heard his voice. "All units, this is war martial. I know you are afraid. I know we are outnumbered. I know some of you have already lost friends today." He paused. Around him, the bridge crew stared at him in the flickering light of explosions. "But let me tell you something about fear. Fear is a choice. We can let it control us or we can use it, channel it, turn it into something else." His voice rose, filling the channel. "They think they have us trapped. They think we will break. They think they know humans. They think they know you." He slammed his fist against the console. "They are wrong. We are not dying here. Not today. They wanted to break us, but humans do not break. We bend. We bleed. And then we hit back harder than they ever imagined." He drew his blade, the same broken blade he had carried now repaired and sharpened. "Follow me." Across the fleet something changed. The panic faded. The chaos became purpose. Soldiers who had been ready to flee suddenly found new strength. Pilots who had given up started fighting again. They followed him. His flagship drove straight toward the center of the swarm formation. It was suicide. It was madness. It was exactly what no enemy expected. "Target the command hive," ordered. "All weapons focus fire, clear me a path." "Sir, the hull is taking critical damage. We cannot survive a direct assault." "We do not need to survive," said. "We need to win." The flagship plunged through walls of fire. Shields failed. Armor melted. Crewmen died at their stations. But the ship kept moving, driven by its captain's iron will. The Swarm Command hive loomed ahead. It was massive, a living fortress the size of a small moon. From its depths, the Swarm Queen sent orders to every soldier, every ship, every drone. Without her, the swarm was just animals. "Prepare collision course," said. "Sir." "You heard me, collision course. Maximum speed, all reactors to overload." The bridge fell silent. "Sir," the first officer said quietly, "if we do this, none of us will survive." Looked at his crew. These men and women had followed him into hell. They deserved honesty. "No," he admitted. "We will not, but our families will. Our worlds will. Every child born after today will grow up in a galaxy free from the swarm. That is what we buy with our lives." He met each of their eyes. "I cannot order you to die with me. Anyone who wishes to evacuate may do so now. No shame, no dishonor." No one moved. The first officer smiled grimly. "We follow you, War Marshal, to the end." Nodded. "Then let us end this war." The flagship accelerated toward the hive. Swarm ships tried to intercept, but the Allied fleet held them back, buying time with their own blood. The hive grew larger and larger in the... Closed his eyes. He thought of her smile, her laugh, the way she held his hand in the dark. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I tried to keep my promise." The flagship struck the hive at maximum velocity. The reactors detonated in a chain reaction that tore through the organic structure like fire through paper. The explosion was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. The Swarm Queen died in an instant of nuclear fire. And across the entire battlefield, the swarm went silent. Without their queen, the soldiers stopped fighting. They stood frozen, confused, directionless. The Allied fleet cut them down without mercy. The battle was over, the war was won. But the flagship was gone. Received the news on the. She fell to her knees and screamed, a sound of pure grief that echoed through the palace halls. She screamed until her voice broke, until servants came running, until the whole world knew that the human war marshal had fallen. She thought of his smile, his quiet strength, his gentle hands. She thought of promises broken. And then the communication console lit up. "My lady," an officer reported, his voice shaking with disbelief. "We found something in the wreckage, a single life pod. Someone survived." His heart stopped. "Who?" she whispered. "We are not sure yet. The pod is damaged. Life signs are weak but present. We are extracting the occupant now." Commandeered the fastest ship available. She flew through the night, breaking every speed regulation, caring nothing for protocol or law. She reached the rescue fleet in 3 hours. The medical bay was crowded with wounded. She pushed through them all, searching desperately. And then she saw him. Lay on a medical bed covered in bandages and tubes. His face was burned. His body was broken, but his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. He was alive. Collapsed beside him, sobbing. She took his hand and pressed it to her lips. "You fool," she wept. "You stubborn, wonderful fool, you promised me, you promised." His eyes fluttered open, weak, exhausted, but alive. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I came back to you." She laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, you did." He smiled, that same tired, gentle smile she had learned to love. "Hello, wife," he said. "Hello, husband," she replied. They held each other in the chaos of the medical bay, surrounded by the wounded and the dead, while the galaxy celebrated its freedom. The war was over, the swarm was destroyed, and the expendable human, the political sacrifice, the god of war, had done the impossible. He had survived. 1 year later, stood in the palace garden, watching the sunset. His body still ached from wounds that would never fully heal, but he was at peace. Joined him, slipping her hand into his. "The Emperor wants to give you another medal," she said. "Tell him I do not need more medals." "I told him he insists." Sighed, "Then I will accept graciously, again." She laughed and leaned against his shoulder. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. He considered the question. A year ago he had been a sacrifice, an expendable nobody, a soldier without a home. Now he had a wife who loved him, a world that respected him, a purpose that mattered. "Yes," he said finally, "I am happy." She kissed his cheek. "Good, because I am happy too." They watched the stars come out, one by one, across the peaceful sky. And across the galaxy, species whispered a new truth, a truth that would echo through generations. Never underestimate a human, especially one with something to protect.